Hi everyone. So in today's video, I have with me Jeannie Andersen, who is a business coach for interior designers. Hi Jeannie, how are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing great as well. Thank you for joining us today. So to start with, just tell us a little bit about what you do and what you are currently doing.
Yeah, absolutely. So, hi, everybody. I'm Jeannie Andresen. I am a life and business coach to interior designers. I work with interior designers in terms of life and business coaching on a weekly basis. I have a program that they enroll in where I teach them how to make more money on less hours worked. And that's called Business School for Designers. And then I have a one-on-one program that is a full day long. That's called a VIP day. And I help them implement a client onboarding process. And there is so much involved in both of those things. But that's really the work that I do with them.
That's great. And again, thank you for joining us. We'll learn a lot from your experience for sure. I've been following your work ever since you've started. You have a really good background, like in business, before you started your own practice. And as far as I remember, you started like in the pandemic, which is very challenging, I would say. Entering into business at any time is challenging, but right when everything was supposedly like going down, we were in lockdown and things like that, you decided to go for it. What made you go for it?
Yeah, such a great question. So the backstory was I worked with a company for almost 10 years and I had an amazing career with them. Like I loved it a majority of the time, which is almost unheard of, I feel like, for a lot of people who have regular corporate jobs, especially for that long of a time. So I enjoyed it a ton, but I just got to a point where I felt like I had plateaued. And I didn't even plateau necessarily in my career trajectory there. It was more so in like the value that I wanted to bring to the world. And I was kind of looking around feeling this isn't it. So shortly before the pandemic, I made a career change and I went to another company, and the pandemic hit, and 3 weeks later, I lost my job. And at the same time that I was being let go, I was already leaning into this is best for everybody. I am not meant to work for somebody else.
Right.
And so in that moment, it's, with the question being, how is it right time, or at what point, how did I realize that it was the right time? I really believe that people know when things are at the wrong time. So let's just use the example of starting a business. I really believe that people know when it is the wrong time to start a business for themselves. They just know. But I also believe that everything else, there is never going to be a right time. And so you have to just kind of look at what's going on in the universe and what's going on in your life and be like, I think that now is it. And that is exactly how I felt, where I was like, okay, sure, we didn't know what was going on with the pandemic, and that was really confusing. And who knew whether that was a good or a bad time to start a business. But for me, I just looked at it and I thought, what an opportunity. In a lot of ways, I still don't, but at the time I didn't have kids, still don't have kids. But at the same time, I was like, okay, well, I don't have kids that I need to support right now. There was government assistance for those that were laid off for the pandemic. There was my company offering me, a severance package with health insurance taken care of for the next year. So there were little things that I'm like, okay, I think that, this could be something good. I could use this to my advantage. And that's really how I felt. And then the last thing that I would mention, kind of the backstory, is at the time that I was leaving my corporate job, I started working with a life coach to help me work through what it was I wanted and who I wanted to be in the world. So I shared that because at the time when I was like, okay, I'm going to go for it, I'm going to start a business, I already worked through a lot of the thoughts and fears that I had around who I wanted to be and the scary, courageous action I would need to take to get there. And so that made it really helpful. Otherwise, I probably would have been needing to hire a coach at that point, but I was already done a lot of that work. So energetically, I was like, let's do this.
That's great. And also like really inspiring, like the way you said that, how, if you're willing to do it, if you want to do it, and universe like sort of like align other stuff to you, that it's so like, I absolutely agree with that. Another interesting move that you did in your business was to change the offerings of your business coaching. That again is like a very brave move for any entrepreneur, I think. And you also not only like changed, you also walked through your audience, like people who like follow you, like how you did that. So what made you pivot to being a business coach for interior designers?
Yeah. Okay. So when I launched my business, even though energetically I was like, okay, this is what I'm meant to do. It's the right time. I'm going to start this business. I have a background in business. I ran a recruiting business in a Fortune 100 company. That was really the corporate role that I had. So I had a lot of experience in how to build an effective calendar, how to attract clients, how to all these things. And at the same time, what I had not done before is launched an online business and attract clients online. And so for a couple years, I would say a year or two, I was very torn with who I was as a coach. I have this background in recruitment, so I was helping a lot of people with career coaching. I find myself to be very much a life coach in terms of how I think and how I help even my clients today transform their businesses. I'm very much a life coach. And then I have this business background that I knew I enjoyed doing. Like I knew that I had like experience that other people didn't have. But at the same time, I didn't know how to marry these things. And I felt like they were all super separate. I didn't want to be a career coach. I think that was maybe, I don't want to say that was a bad move, that I didn't immediately launch myself as a career coach. If I did, I think I would have had a lot more success early on, because it would have been really crystal clear and I have all this experience to lean on. But at the same time, I didn't want that. There was something else that was calling my name, which was helping women in business in some capacity. Another thing that I'm passionate about is helping women make more money. I just find that the more that I just talk to women, not only business owners, but just women in the corporate world, there's a lot of fears around asking for money and a lot of insecurity about what it is that they deserve, but there's a lot of desires of making more money. And those are things that I never really struggled with, or at least if I did, I worked past them in a way that allowed me to make more money, ask for money, and enjoy having money. And so that was the other piece of this where I'm like, okay, I know I love helping women make more money and I know I have a knack for it, but I don't want to be a career coach. So how am I going to do that in business? So all of that said, throughout the couple years where I was kind of helping everyone do everything, my best friend in the entire world is an interior designer, and she knew that I really wanted to find who my person was going to be that I was going to help. She's like, Jeannie, you got to work with designers. We have no idea how to run businesses. We have no processes in place. We're totally lost. And when she was saying that, I thought, that's not really who I am. I'm a life coach. Like I said, I find myself to do a lot more life coaching in terms of my practices. And she's like, just start talking to designers. You just start like hearing what our problems are. That's exactly what I did. And the more that I heard what they struggle with, the more I felt compelled to help them. It was like, oh, no. You're doing it that way. Oh my goodness, let me help you. And it was so interesting to notice how very naturally this like separation of life coaching and business coaching came together with this specific market. And the more I talk to them, I want to share this with their audience, because like, I didn't go into talking to designers wanting to sell them on any sort of business that I had. It was more, let me just start talking to them and learning what their problems are. And I would learn their problems and offer a couple suggestions and share with them a little bit about my background. And very naturally, they started asking to pay me to help them with their businesses. And there was a moment where I was making more money with designers by not even marketing to them. Like, Zoha, I love that you've been following me for a while, because like it seemed probably pretty abrupt when I was like, everyone, I'm working with interior designers now, but I had them as clients behind the scenes without even marketing to them. I loved working with them. I was seeing their businesses transform from the work I was doing. And I was like having a lot of financial success with it. And I'm looking at this and I'm like, what do I do? Like, it's like, like it was, everything felt so right, except in my brain, which was like, you're not meant to be a coach to designers. Like, are you crazy? You're meant to be just like a generalist life coach for women. And I am a big fan of meditation. I'm a big fan of essentially shutting our brains down and letting our messages like come to us. And I had a moment where I was like, universe, how can this be easy? And who am I meant to be? And the only thing I heard back was, you are meant to be working with and serving these designers at a high capacity. And I think I probably cried, because I was like, oh my God, this is so crazy. Like, I'm going to be going all in and marketing specifically to this crew. And I don't know what it's going to be like. Like, I don't know if it's going to work, if it's not going to work. I don't have a background in design, but it felt so aligned that I couldn't not do it. Any other option, which was like, I thought that maybe I would niche down with people-pleasing small business owners, because I really help people-pleasing interior designers if we really are getting specific with like what my services really do. So I was like, maybe I'll just do people-pleasing small business owners. And it just felt like I was still beating around the bush. It was like, why I would be making that decision out of fear that I wouldn't be able to succeed with designers. And I needed to call myself out on that. And then I was like, I'm doing this. I'm all in on designers. And it has been awesome.
That's great. And like listening to like how you went about like going for it, I think what I got out of from your experience just while we're talking right now is how effectively you use your, like, you were not actually networking, you were, asking people what their, what problems they're.
I was doing market research is how I would refer to it.
And that is, I think that is a lesson in itself for everyone out there who wants to start something. Like sometimes people just go right away into marketing, like, I'm gonna start this, and things like that. So that sometimes works, sometimes doesn't, but
it often doesn't. And that's a little bit of what I was doing for the first maybe year to 18 months. Because again, I was not really focused on marketing career coaching. So I was like, okay, and I just kind of was like, I think I'm gonna start marketing this, but I never really stopped to ask someone what they were struggling with in a way that allowed me to learn more about how I could possibly shape my business. I am telling you, when I actually learned what women and business owners and these interior designers specifically were struggling with, I was blown away by how almost like simple it was for me to solve, because it was just things that I naturally do not struggle with. And at the same time, like how overcomplicating I was making everything else for a very long time. So I think it's if you want to start a business, if you're thinking about it, start asking people what they're struggling with, and you will be very surprised. You will be very surprised.
Yeah. And another thing, like, I think your experience and your training, like as a life coach and a business coach, that blend really, like it shows in your work, like how you understand your client and how you help them. So that blend is also very good. I think everyone should like start coaching clients through that,
Totally. I find that to be a competitive edge of mine, is like, not only do I know business, but like, I'm a good coach. Like, I not only care so much about my clients getting a result that's attainable to them, but I am trained in asking the right questions. I have 2 coaching certifications. I'm trained in asking the right questions that will help someone essentially find their own answers and unblock themselves from the fear and self-doubt that might be holding them back. And I don't believe that every coach has that balance. I think a lot of them will tell you what to do, but they won't focus on trying to figure out what's holding you back from doing it, which just allows a lot of clients to not feel supported in a way that allows them to actually attain a result that they want. And so I really find like this blend of both and it's again, specifically in what I help people with, like, especially, helping these people pleasing small business owners. It's a lot of fear around what other people are going to think, being afraid of setting expectations, being afraid of asking for money and being seen as selfish. It's like I do a lot of thought work with that. And then we go to work on creating processes to make sure that they are like basically valuing their services effectively and making the money that they're meant to make in the world. And it's the 2 together. Yeah. Separately, I don't think it works. Together, it really creates profound results for my clients.
Absolutely. I totally agree with that. And I really like that approach for sure. All right, moving on. So again, like referring to your blog and your, social media presence, you connect and share a lot of things and connect them with your personal experiences. And lessons sort of like you drive from those experiences towards like your business or things that you do. But it comes with certain amount of like vulnerability, when you start putting yourself out there like that. How do you deal with that, or how it has been for you?
I think naturally being a life coach, again, that's what I see myself as first. I'm like a life coach who's really understands business and can help with business and obviously supports business owners. But at the same time, I think really being a life coach allows those messages to come more naturally, because I understand the importance of sharing courageous action I've had to take for other people to see, hey, I did this scary action and I'm still here. And I think that when we hide those things, people can feel very alone. They feel very alone if they're taking the action on their own and maybe not attaining a certain result. They feel really alone if, they are wishing to be somebody else in the world and they're afraid to do so and they don't see enough messages of other people doing that. And so I really find like it to feel natural to share my different stories of kind of what I've experienced, I don't like saying what I've gone through as though it's like anything negative, but it's more just like life experience that feels really hard in the moment. But like you get to the other side of it and look how beautiful it can be. And I just know that a lot of women can be very stuck in a certain way because they're afraid of other people's judgment, other people's criticism. They're afraid of what life might look like if they were to make a change and what other people will think about it. And I just want to be the person that shows, that is the example to them that, listen, it's so much fun on the other side. Like, I know it's hard and I know the feelings that you have to feel are hard and I know the actions you have to take are courageous. At the same time, it's a lot of fun to really be who you're meant to be in the world and to show yourself and everyone else how strong you can be too. I also don't find a lot of the messages I share to be very vulnerable. I think I naturally am a person who shares what I am experiencing, again, for the sake of helping somebody else. And that comes from just having just like a wonderful mom who never really had this fear of vulnerability, but instead just like was very much herself. And I even remember, growing up, moments where my mom would go to therapy. And I just think like she never hid that from anybody. And I'm a huge fan of therapy. I encourage everybody to go to therapy. I don't find it vulnerable to talk about when I say I go to therapy. Right. I don't find that, but other people have messaged me on, have DM'd me on Instagram and have said, because of your message, I started going to therapy. Or they reach out to me to say, hey, I'm not really talking about this publicly, but I'd love to be connected to a therapist. How did you find yours? And when I get these messages, I'm like, holy moly, there is stigma in other people's lives on something like that. And even though I don't feel that at all, I think being able to just share who I am, what I do, what I'm about, gives other people permission to do the same. So I think that that's another piece of this, is some things that are vulnerable to me are very vulnerable to other people. And like, I just don't even notice it. I'm just out there like being me because I want to be helpful in that way.
And I totally agree with the point where you said, like, becoming an example and making the connection with people is also like one part of it, because you end up making people feel that they're not alone. Like it's not them, experiencing something. And if they try, like they can power through whatever situation they're in as well.
Totally. And also keep in mind, like any experience that I share means I've gone through that experience before. And I remember at times feeling very alone or questioning what the other side was going to look like. I mean, I went through like an awful breakup with an ex that I was with for many, many years. And we like lived together, had a dog together, like, and I remember in that time, it's not necessarily that I felt very alone, but I did for moments feel like, oh my gosh, what is my life going to look like in a few years? Like, oh my goodness. Like, and you just have these thoughts that are fear-based. And it's very cool to be on the other side. And keep in mind, like, again, I do life coaching. I read a lot of books. So I like got to the other side of that pretty quickly. And and now, I'm engaged to just a wonderful, wonderful man who I love more than anything. And I have another dog and he's amazing. And I don't know, and I moved and I have this wonderful condo I bought that's like in the heart of the city. And all of that took place because of that breakup and who I became after it. And I mean, that breakup was the best thing that could have ever happened to me. But I think a lot of people wallow in stuff like that. And I know that, I don't know, to be on the other side of that, be able to like shout it to others, like I think is really beneficial because I had to do the work myself to get out of that. I didn't really have somebody to look to who could tell me, how great things are on the other side. I had to believe in that myself. So I think that's also helpful.
Yeah. And that's why I think we need people like you to share your experiences. So really thankful for that. So my last question to you is, I kind of like changed this question. Normally the question is around like, what would you tell your younger self? But I changed it, like, what would you tell your older self, like 10 years or 20 years down the line? Like, anything you want to say?
Yeah. So here's what I would say, because I'm like, I thought about that and I'm like, I really would answer that twofold. So number one is, okay, when I think of myself 10 years from now or 20 years from now, I think like, hell yeah, girlfriend, you're awesome and you did it. And when I think that way, I feel that way, and I like have a vision of who I am at the time, I have that vision in a way that is so inspiring and exciting. Like, I can't wait to see who I am in 10 years. I can't wait to see what I've accomplished in 20 years and what life looks like. So that's kind of my first answer. And then I did switch it around and I was like, okay, if I were to look backwards, what would I tell myself today? And I would tell myself, don't sweat the small stuff, keep going, everything falls into place. And that's really how I feel. And that's how, if I were to tell myself myself 5 years ago, that's what I would say to myself too. So I just think as many messages as we can have of like, don't sweat the small stuff. Everything will be okay. Everything's going to fall into place. Breathe, lean into the moment. I think like those are the messages our universe needs to hear, because everyone's so caught up in, fears of the future or focus on the past. And it's like, we're just fine. We just got to keep doing what we're doing. We're good. That's how I feel.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I love that message. And again, like, thank you for taking out the time to do this. I'm sure everyone who will watch this will definitely be inspired and take something out of this video. So thank you. What I'm gonna do is I will share your website and social media links
Awesome.
in the description so that people can reach out to you, see your work, and connect with you. So that is something I will do. Anything you want to say at the closing? Anything you want to add?
Keep going. Keep feeling the signs of the universe. Don't get caught up in your head. Move on from the past. Don't focus too much on the future. Just be you. Be you. Everything's going to fall into place.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much. And for everyone else who's watching, I'll see you in the next video. Thank you.
Thank you.